Is the Sony FX6 worth buying in 2025 and going into 2026, especially when it's a 5-year-old camera? Is it getting a little bit outdated compared to all the new cinema cameras coming out lately? Or you got a Sony FX3 and you just don't know whether buying a Sony FX6 is actually worth the investment? Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly why I bought the Sony FX6 in July 2025, which is fairly recently. So I've only had it for a fair few months, and I'm going to tell you why it's probably been the best investment for me. One of the main reasons I bought the Sony FX6 is because of its form factor. It's fairly compact still. People could say that it's quite a big, bulky camera. I think it's really compact, especially from someone who always rigged up my Sony FX3. It was always a big camera anyway, because I rigged it up, but I never really liked the way I rigged it. I found it really uncomfortable. I couldn't really find a way to rig up my Sony FX3 that felt genuinely comfortable. I actually got to a point where through long shoots, my wrist will start to get sore and ache, and the next day and all the following day, it'll just be quite painful. And this is someone who works out regularly, who does high rocks, CrossFit workouts. I'm always using my wrist, so I've never experienced any sort of wrist pain until I was really rigging up my FX3 and using it for long periods of time. But ever since buying the Sony FX6, I've never experienced any wrist pain at all, probably because down to the ergonomics of the handle as it articulates. It's so easy. The form factor, again, it looks good. Everyone knows the Sony FX6 looks like a fantastic camera. You've got all the buttons on the side, which is super easy to use and navigate. The buttons are very nice. You can actually feel you pressing the button. They're tactile. It's not a touch screen. I hate touch screens because you just don't know what you're pressing. Whereas when you've got buttons, you can kind of feel, and once you kind of built up that muscle memory where the positioning of the buttons, it comes second nature. You don't need to look at the camera. You can literally just cool, I need to hit ND, I hit ND. And then you've got the record button up there. You've got the record button on the handle. You've got the record button on the top handle. There's so many choice and options on where you need to record. You've got S&Q on there, which is just a tap of a button. Not many people realize that you can change the settings on your Sony FX3 to have a tap of a button to go straight to S&Q. So many people didn't even realize that, and I tell them that and they're like, whoa, that's game changing. I was gonna buy a Sony FX6 just for that feature, which is kind of ridiculous in the sense of it, but it definitely does help, just flicking through rather than going through a menu. But you can do that on the Sony FX3, so if you need help doing that, just let me know. I can tell you how to do it. But yeah, the main reason is just the form factor. You look like a filmmaker. I want to look like a filmmaker, and I just want to look professional. So when I go on to bigger productions, bigger shoots with clients like Gymshark and Huel that I've worked with, I just want to look like the guy that they're happy that they spent the money for. Obviously, the content speaks for itself, but when I rock up there, they see me with my cameras, the Sony FX3, the Sony FX6, they know that it's going to be a good job done. And I guess this point kind of taps in similar with the functionality of the camera, but it's how everything flows. If I switch the on button, it literally flicks on super fast. It goes on quickly, unlike other cinema cameras such as the Red, which you're probably waiting 15, 30 seconds, and at the point you might just miss the shot that you want just because you're reserving the battery. So this point links in with kind of the ergonomics, but it's just the flow of the camera. Using my chest as a point of contact with a V-mount battery, I've got all the tools or all the buttons I need on the side. I'm not having to worry about anything on top, etc. I've got buttons on the handle here, sorry, on the grip. It doesn't matter where the subject I'm filming or whatever I'm filming. If I'm up high and I need to shoot low down, I can simply rotate it and it's super easy. Same if I'm low down, I need to shoot up. All I have to do is just rotate, and it's exactly the same like that. And I've got buttons on the side there, and it just works so well. So if I need to flick the NDs on, I can just do it at the tap of a button, so easy without even looking. If I need to, check the menu, I can just tap the menu without looking. It just comes second nature. Another feature that absolutely sold it to me was the electronic variable ND. So nothing manual. I mean, you can do it manual, but you can have it on automatic, which is absolutely fantastic. So when you go from an outside to an inside situation, it just gradually increases exposure or decreases exposure, which makes it so amazing for filmmaking and documentary or long form content. where you can just keep on recording on the fly and it doesn't make any harsh adjustments, unlike a manual one where you have to like dial it in like this and you can easily notice it, whereas on the FX6 it's so gradual that you don't even notice, and it just saves the footage. There's been countless of times where I'm filming a client and it's been a bright sunny day, perfectly exposure, and then all of a sudden a big black cloud comes over the sun and everything just looks so underexposed, and then I'm having to like manually adjust it and it just looks like hard stops. That's just happening and just ruins the footage. I might be just being a perfectionist, but it really triggers me, especially if I want to make the best looking content for my clients. You know, you're gonna need tools that are gonna help you to make the best content possible, and that's where the Sony FX6 comes in. All in all, there isn't really much of a big deal I don't like about this camera. I think the only thing I could probably say that is a little bit of an annoyance, but it's the onboard monitor from the FX6, this little guy. It's great in terms of ergonomics, how it moves around. There's a lot of choices where you can position it onto the handle, but it's just the brightness of the display. It's so faded, it's so hard to really see what you're shooting if it's super bright. Yes, it comes with like some sort of like a little shader that you can attach to it, but even that, it just isn't enough. And with it not having false color, it makes it hard sometimes to actually check if things are properly exposed. So that's when the Ninja comes in hand, because it's bigger, I can put the grids on there, but also it's the false color. I can make sure things are perfectly exposed. That's literally the best tool to get the best exposure, followed by the waveforms. And probably one of the biggest contributors that made me want to just buy the Sony FX6 was from one of my favorite filmmakers and YouTube creators, Danny Gewirtz. You know, he recently bought a Sony FX6 and I was like, wow. Like, if a creator like him used a Sony FX3 and buying a Sony FX6 in 2025 going into very close to 2026, if he's making that move, it's a no-brainer. It doesn't matter about what camera you use at the end of the day, it's all about the camera you got in your hands, and I think that's the most important thing and for you to take away from this. So if you are someone who's starting out with just an iPhone, or you just got the Sony a7 IV that I'm using, or you have got a Sony FX3 or whatever camera you've got, that's going to be the best tool, because at the end of the day, having the best gimmicks, cameras, etc., with the latest, you know, open gate, 8K, etc., isn't going to make you a better filmmaker, isn't going to make you a better storyteller. What's going to make you a better filmmaker, storyteller, etc., is just getting out there and film and capture and create. And I think that's the most important thing to take away. So if you are a professional and you've been doing this for a fair few years, and that investment of buying a Sony FX6, whether that's of this recording might be between £5,000 and £6,000. If that's not going to do much of a dent to you, go ahead and buy it. If dropping that much money is going to be quite painful, it's going to take a long time to pay back, it's probably not going to be the best investment. Whatever you've got right now, it's going to be the best tool for you to start creating content and start your career as a filmmaker, content creator, creating content for businesses, etc. So I think that's the number one key takeaway, which is probably the most important thing, is cameras do help make better content, but what's the most important thing is how you use the camera and how you tell stories. That is what's going to set you apart, rather than buying the latest camera or the next camera up.